I'm Elena from Northzone. Northzone is a global VC fund. We back founders from early stage to growth. And we've been super privileged to back some amazing companies like Spotify, Klarna, Personia, and some really cool new AI founders like Black Forest Labs and Cusp. Today, I am delighted to welcome Sandra. Sandra is Global Head of Growth at Spotify, and she's seen the whole journey from 9 million subscribers to 293 even subscribers globally. And yeah, super excited to dig in on some of the learnings that we can have there in terms of company building.
Thank you, Elena. Great to be here with you. Excited about our conversation. Yes, I joined Spotify 12 years ago. In 2014, we had 9 million subscribers when I joined and went into the growth team. 12 years later, we're 293 million, growing quickly, hopefully reaching soon 300. That's been a 30x growth adventure. That's been phenomenal. And yeah, and I head there basically all of the global growth marketing. I've set up from scratch the international growth premium teams and all of performance marketing, also acquisition, retention, conversion for product-led growth tactics, and personally also was involved in launching internationally the premium go-to-market for most of the markets that took us from really a Western European model and company to a truly global one. So I'm excited to be here and share a little bit of that story.
Awesome. And just diving right in, what are some of the key lessons you've had in scaling premium internationally?
So one of the first lessons we had when I joined, we had just recently launched LATAM, Brazil, Mexico, and a bunch of other markets. And we had done it with a very Western European copy-paste model. And we soon and quickly found out the conversion to premium wasn't working there. So we went in, diagnosed what was happening, looked really at all of the different parts of the funnel, and identified that the messaging was off, the value prop wasn't resonating, we didn't have the right payment methods in place, and even some of the offers that we were putting out there weren't really resonating at all. So we basically redid the whole funnel and really tweaked it significantly and adapted it locally in Brazil and Mexico as our first really test countries. 18 months later, we had 5x'd the markets, and it's been a phenomenal growth journey since then. And that really became our playbook for that international expansion and adaptation. We realized how important it is to have boots on the ground for the go-to-market and making sure that when you're going international and expanding, you truly localize the funnel. You're not just doing a messaging translation, but you're really looking at all of those different parts. And that became then like our global playbook for all of the other market launches that we did thereafter in all of Asia. We launched all of Middle East, all of Africa. So
very cool. And how do you balance the localization, with the true product authenticity globally?
Yes, and I think that's a question I get a lot. Also just balancing being very local and also the global efficiencies that you want to retain. You want to make sure you have those boots on the ground, the deep market experts that really are going to be able to diagnose those issues and sort them out and get to a better conversion for you. At the same time, you want to make sure that you are scaling efficiently at a global level. So I'll give a couple of examples. In Mexico and Brazil, for example, 10 years ago, we tested out some what we thought at the time, pretty aggressive offers, 3 months for free. We could do it there because of a series of circumstances, and we were ready to be bold there. They worked so phenomenally well. We then tested them out in a few other markets, including US, and eventually rolled it out globally. And now it's become even an industry standard for many media streaming services to offer these type of offers. It wasn't obvious at the beginning. It started like a smaller test. But when you find something that you see is good and can scale, you need to then have that discipline to scale it, to institutionalize it, to really develop the operational muscle for it, and make it then basically globally efficient. And that I think is very important. So you, on the one hand, make sure that you have those boots on the ground, that deep knowledge, but for the global efficiency, you then have some of maybe the data infrastructure, the tooling for some of these bigger bets or like ongoing global setups that you want to have. Performance marketing, for example, we run at a global level. We also then connect locally for certain local activations we want to do, but we run it much more efficiently by running it globally. So that is that fine balance. And as long as you are clear on what is owned by local, meaning, well, some of the overall go-to-market and the deep market knowledge, adaptation of certain propositions, etc. And what is owned by global, some of the overall tooling, maybe some of your bigger global programs, and the overall data infrastructure. And you have shared targets. I think that's super important. We've always had shared targets of this is the subscriber target number we're going to hit. As long as you're able to do that, then it's less about that conflict coordination and really about just running fast and identifying good things you test locally and scaling them so that they can actually compound to really drive significant growth at a global level. So that's how we think about local and global and bringing them together and having really both.
And I guess incentive alignment must be really important in that setup.
Definitely, definitely. It's important. It's something you work through also continuously. And I would say keeping flexible. We've pivoted and adapted multiple times throughout the years.
Very cool. And moving on to one of my favorite times of the year, so Spotify Wrapped. Tell me a little bit how you discovered that product-led growth motion and any learnings you have there on how to build up that function for success.
Wrapped, one of the favorite stories for many of us, yes.
Like Christmas, you know?
Yes. Wrapped actually started 10 years ago. And it started as a small marketing bet, actually. They wanted to do like a year in review, end of year moment, and a marketing activation. And they started with a microsite because we didn't really have the product resources at the moment. It wasn't what it is today. And so that's how it was done for a couple of years. We saw it had good traction. And so product then came in, and we started to do it in-house and also within the app. And slowly but surely, the investment grew into Wrapped. We added more data stories. We added different Wrapped also for our artists, our creators. We added different angles. And the culmination of that was really last year, which really topped the charts with over 300 million engagers and over 600 million shares, and a cultural phenomenon that is coveted by brands and really a very special moment for all our users all around. And I think that the interesting and valuable story there's a couple. One is when you think, what I was a little bit saying before, when you think about those early investments, if you find something that is good, how do you make sure you continue to double down on it and grow it and eventually compound it into a very mature tactic that is delivering continuous growth for you today? And the other thing I would want to say is a bit how I also think about product-led growth. And treating it a little bit as your portfolio, as if you were an investor and this is your portfolio. You have some bets that are very mature, like Wrapped is for us today, and then some others that are more nascent, and some that are in the middle. Another good example is the referral program that started as a test in Australia for students, actually. We thought, we saw that had good legs, and eventually, slowly but surely, we started testing it more broadly for more audiences, not just for students. Eventually, we set it up as a fully fleshed referral program, and now it's delivering significant value for us on a yearly basis. And I would say that's like mid-stage maturity. And then we have some very nascent ones, like we launched a year ago, 2 years ago, in-app voting for users for different awards that we might be running and activations we might be running globally, and that's going to mature. So when you think about product-led growth, for me, I like to think about it as that portfolio where you have the mature bets that are those sure wins that are going to bring you the growth, and some earlier ones that you're starting to seed and are going to see what that journey is for them, and you're going to continue investing in them if you're seeing the right signals. And having a good balance of a bit of everything is important, like in any good portfolio.
I love that. So you have to have space for experimentation and testing.
Exactly.
And I guess for the ones that don't scale, then you just have to be disciplined and move on to the next.
Exactly.
Very cool. And yeah, you've built your team from scratch to more than 100 people. What do you look for when you're hiring?
It's a sweet combination of business acumen, creativity, and really that desire for impact and that bias for action for desire for impact. It's super important. And not everybody has a different spike, everybody has different natural interests. So finding those three elements is really, really important, because then you have folks that many times you go in with a white canvas. We launched in so many markets we had no idea about, and you have to go in and figure out everything basically. What is the competitive landscape? You know, how am I going to resonate versus competitors? What's the right proposition? Test a ton and be brave to like figure out, okay, this is not working. Let's try this other thing. And for that, you need to have the creativity, the business acumen to like be able to look at the data and say, okay, these are the opportunities I'm identifying. And that bias for action. So really then wanting to find what that impact is that you can drive and seek to improve it. The other thing I would say around that is my style is very much secure-based leadership, and I think it's really important in those types of functions because of that blank space. I have a very high bar for impact, and at the same time, I make sure it's a trusted environment where everyone has their back, and my team knows I have their back, because that way you are bullish to test crazy things as well and to learn from them. The most important thing is to learn if you fail. But if you don't have that trust, then you don't necessarily, really branch out and do some of the bold things that you might not necessarily know how are going to pan out, but actually might be some of your biggest wins. And I think one of the last things I'd say, and maybe not necessarily specifically to your question, but something that I find has been very powerful when you want to focus on growth. We've had models where product and growth marketing are sitting separate. We've also had them together. When you really want to optimize, and it depends on what you're optimizing for as a company in different stages, but if you're really optimizing for solving in certain aspects of growth, having product and marketing working hand by hand in the same team is incredibly powerful, because what you see is that a lot of the coordination tax that you get otherwise disappears, and you're able to really craft your strategies from infancy together, and the decisions are made faster, and you just move faster. So, and at the same time, because there's less coordination, everybody's much more on the same page, you also see how all of the different functions are amplifying each other's work. And that is incredibly powerful.
Yeah, and we often have really early stage portfolio companies of ours that are wanting to learn from the org structure of Spotify. What do you think is the magic of preserving the entrepreneurial spirit there?
I think, first of all, a huge passion for what you do. And you definitely live and breathe that at Spotify. And it's always been that way. And a bit what I mentioned earlier around the people you hire for. They have that passion, and at the same time, they have that thirst for impact. And so they're going to be very entrepreneurial in what they're, in trying to sort out issues. For example, when I set up the international premium growth team from scratch. There was nothing, and we scaled it up to like 40 people. And back at that time, that was 10 years ago, there were very few resources. The teams had to be incredibly scrappy at a local level, figuring out to unlock, not how to unlock resources from the company, because they were just basically not there. How to unlock the ship with any resources they could get, or just doing it themselves. And I think going back to what really inherently drives the people is critical, because then they go the extra mile. And I think that's probably what resonates a lot with a lot of the people in this.
Very cool. And yeah, we're coming up to time. So if you had to leave the group with your main takeaways for building a growth function and scaling, what would they be?
First of all, if you're going to go internationally, expand internationally, make sure you're really adapting fully at a local level across the funnel, like I said earlier, and not just translating your messaging. And today also with AI, you can do that much more sophisticated, much faster, and deeper, in the sense that you can even target audience level significantly more. But make sure you do that, because a copy-paste model is just not going to work, and you really need to dissect the funnel and adapt it. The second thing I would say is making sure that when you're thinking about global and local, making sure that you have both, and having the discipline to identify bets that you've done maybe at a local level or in a certain corner, and scaling them at a global level with discipline, institutionalizing them. That's what differentiates really a good idea and a moment in time to operational excellence and really compounding growth. So that would be the second thing I'd say is really important, having those both functions with common targets and scaling those bets at a global level when you find them. And thirdly, I'd say think about product-led growth from a portfolio perspective, where you have some of your bets that are much more mature. Make sure you continue to invest in them if they're still yielding. They're the ones that guarantee that growth for you, so you have less pressure, and you can make sure that you're then testing into nascent ones that might or might not work out, but you have the space to be able to do that. And the ones that are in the middle, like we were saying, you'll have to have the rigor to see, do you find the right signals for them to continue scaling and then becoming, and maturing, or do you need to basically, get rid of them and move on to the next one?
Amazing. Thank you so much, Sandra. It was amazing to have you here.